The United Mexican States, and more commonly referred to as Mexico, is the southern neighbor of the United States and northern neighbor of Guatemala and Belize, and is one of the largest countries in the world, being ranked at 13th place by area. Mexico was founded on September 27, 1821, and gained independence from the Spanish almost a month later on August 24, 1821, with the country existing for more than 200 years now. Before we get into the iceberg though, I just want to say that certain entries on this iceberg we couldn't find much on, so if you live in Mexico and have some information on them, then please let me know in the comments below, and we'll make a separate tier at the end for all the unknown entries. And for now, we're just gonna go past all the things we couldn't really find much on. Credit goes to the Reddit user Zimakwa for creating this iceberg, and it will be linked down in the description below. It's no secret that the Mexican government does cooperate with drug dealers and cartels to a degree, and if you've seen Narcos Mexico, then of course you know about the historical Federal Security Directorate, or Mexican DFS, who famously was exposed for multiple crimes such as tortures, assassinations, and cooperation with criminal organizations like drug cartels. If you don't know who they are, they basically were Mexico's version of the CIA, and did a lot of the fucked up shit that the CIA did. They most famously worked with the Guadalajara cartel. However, government corruption and cooperation with drug cartels still occurs within Mexico despite the Mexican government declaring a narco war in 2006. The Mexican federal government, law enforcement, and military all have confirmed drug trafficking collaborators within them, some being full-on members of cartels while others are merely just collaborators or cooperative. And it is important to note that the United States CIA has been accused of collaboration with drug cartels as well, and was confirmed to have aided the DFS as part of the Truman Doctrine of Soviet containment. This is true for every country in the world, with some being worse than others, but Mexico is popularly known to have extreme corruption within its political system. Mexico has been exposed on multiple occasions of politicians using bribes to ensure votes and supports and sometimes re-election. The Institutional Revolutionary Party is a political party in Mexico that held power as the one party in Mexico from 1929 to 2000 and was characterized by these bribes, with little political competition and organization outside of the party existing for more than 70 years. However, this is true for any of the now multiple parties in Mexico who have suffered little to no consequences for vote buying and electoral fraud, and of course, the drug cartels and other measures are used by politicians and other government entities in Mexico. Many of Mexico's institutions, including those for law, policy, justice, and finance, function under a patron-client system in which officials receive money, political support, or other bribes from criminal organizations in exchange for minimal interference in their criminal affairs or complete impunity from them. Martín Luis Guzmán Franco was a prominent novelist in Mexico during its revolutionary period, who wrote several books on the political corruption within Mexico. Shadow of the Leader, also called La Sombra del Caudillo, is a book Guzmán wrote in 1929 which depicted various elements of the political corruption of the 1920s in Mexico. Guzmán had served in the Mexican Revolution under the command of the famous revolutionary general Pancho Villa, and in 1914, after the fall of Victoriano Huerta's government, Guzmán was jailed due to being a political enemy of the Constitutionalist Army. Upon his release, after the dispute between the Constitutionalist and the Army of the Convention, Guzmán left in exile to Madrid, Spain, where he began writing weekly articles on the issues in Mexico. Between the years of 1914 to 1920, Guzmán would travel the world writing and speaking about Mexico's corruption. Eventually, Guzmán returned to Mexico after the assassination of President José Venustiano Carranza de la Garza and became the private secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and began working in the politics of Mexico, continuing to write various novels until 1964 before becoming a senator from 1969 until his death in 1976. Paulette Case was a 4-year-old Mexican girl who went missing on March 22, 2010, later being found in her bedroom wrapped in sheets between the mattress and foot of the bed, which was ruled an accidental death due to asphyxiation. Official ruling states Paulette had moved on the bed and accidentally fell headlong into a space at the foot of her bed, where she died of asphyxiation and subsequently remained unnoticed for 9 days. However, there's a lot of controversy with this ruling because when actually knowing the circumstances following her disappearance and eventual discovery, none of it really makes any sense. For starters, the fact that for 9 days nobody noticed Paulette's body in the mattress is quite bizarre, especially when it was stated that there were dozens of people actually at that house looking for her, including 2 nannies who, when asked, stated, quote, "I looked in the bedroom, under the bed, and in the closet. I saw that she was not there, and I also went into the bedroom of the parents to look for her, to the bedroom of the other girl, Paulette's older sister Lisette, and from there, we started looking for her again, and I went back to look for her in the bedroom," end quote. And, quote, "In fact, if it had been like that, I think we would have noticed, since thousands of people came to look for her. The bed was made. I never saw the mattress pulled back. I did not see a bundle or anything. It does not make sense to me that the body could have been there since Monday," end quote. It was even documented that a close friend of the family named Amanda de la Rosa had lived in the family's house for several days following the disappearance, sleeping in the same bed that Paulette was discovered in, and never noticed her, despite the bed being remade several times in the days following her disappearance. However, the biggest controversy comes from the forensics video taken by Wixkulukan forensics experts when she was discovered. In the video, the forensics team initially claimed that Paulette was severely beaten, wrapped in blood-soaked sheets, but this detail was quickly just swept under the rug and just never mentioned again, instead being ruled as an accidental asphyxiation. And I don't know about you guys, but I've never heard of anyone severely beating themselves to the point where they are bleeding while they suffocate in a mattress. More controversy from the forensics video, as stated from most experts, is that the crime scene looks like a reenactment, and the forensics team's voices while they speak about the scene in the video sounds robotic, almost like they're reading from a script. The last huge bit of evidence against the official ruling is that a recording between Paulette's mother Fada and Paulette's sister Lisette was released, where Fada is heard instructing Lisette not to say anything about Paulette's disappearance so that they wouldn't be blamed. However, Fada denied this, claiming the recording was edited and taken out of context to make them look guilty. She stated that conversation did occur, but with missing context. This is a very tragic and obviously corrupted case, and it's just horrible that this poor little girl was possibly murdered by someone, and they had it covered up, or that she literally just suffocated in her bed. So, rest in peace, Paulette Case. The Mexico City metro system is the second largest subway system in North America, right after New York's subway system. The metro system began construction in 1967 and since then has expanded to 226.49 kilometers, or 140.73 miles of route. In that time, several different stories of the metro being haunted have surfaced in Mexico, and after the 1985 earthquake in Mexico City, even more people started telling stories of the metros being haunted, ranging from benevolent specters to self-unalive victims' ghosts to shadows and even specific trains being haunted like the 500 to 501. It's also worth noting that a lot of bad things have happened on the metro, things like train collisions and murders to train fires, and as stated before, a severe earthquake hit Mexico City in 1985. Ayotzinapa is a rural teachers' college located in Guerrero, Mexico, where in 2014, one of Mexico's most infamous human rights violations occurred. On September 26, 2014, in collusion with Mexican drug gangs, several Iguala police officers had conducted a mass kidnapping at the college, abducting 43 students, with only 3 being located and their deaths confirmed as of 2024. In February 2013, the then President of Mexico, Enrique Peña Nieto, published an education bill in agreement with the Pact for Mexico, that basically stated that the public education system would be reformed in Mexico, introducing a competitive process for the hiring, promotion, recognition, and tenure of teachers, principals, and administrators, and declared that all previous appointments that did not conform to the procedures were null. A number of teachers opposed this bill, including students from the Ayotzinapa College, and took to protesting in Mexico City from May 2014 to September 2014, which caused a clash between local police and calls for actions against the protesters. On September 26 of 2014, more than 100 students from the college had planned to interrupt a DIF conference in Iguala and then hijack buses to use in a protest march in Mexico City. However, on their way, they were stopped by the Iguala police and, according to the police report, were chased down by police due to attempting to hijack the buses. However, the protesters claimed that they were merely hitchhiking when intercepted by the police. Despite which account remained true, a shootout occurred which killed 2 students on the buses, and eyewitnesses state that 43 of the students were rounded up by police and taken away to the Iguala police station, where at some point they were handed over to the Guerreros Unidos, which is a crime syndicate in Mexico that split from the Beltran-Leyva cartel. After they were handed over, it is assumed that they were killed on orders from the gang leader, Cedronio Casarrubia Salgado. However, as stated in the beginning, most of the students' fates remain unconfirmed, as 40 of the students still remain missing to this day. Narcosatanism could be referring to multiple things, such as obviously drug cartels who practice Satanism. It is a fact that Satanism and ritualistic violence has been rising within the Mexican drug war ever since 2006. However, Satanism is indeed practiced by many small gangs and even some drug cartels, and later down the line in this iceberg we will talk about some other ritualistic killings that certain cartels have done. However, this entry could also simply be referring to the Mexican-Cuban-American serial killer Adolfo de Jesus Constanzo, who led an infamous drug trafficking group in Mexico with Sara Maria Durate Villarreal, which was dubbed the Narco-Satanists by the media. Their gang was essentially a cult that engaged in drug trafficking and ritualistic killings, with 16 confirmed kills and 26 suspected killings. The murders were always mutilations in the name of human sacrifice, with some instances even including internal organs missing. And the story of Adolfo and Maria was actually adapted into a TV series called The Narco-Satanist.
TV Azteca and Televisa are the 2 largest mass media corporations in Mexico that since the 1980s have been exposed for a multitude of things, including fraud, spreading misinformation based on political biases. But in 2010, Televisa and TV Azteca began airing a series of reports that claimed that businessman Isaac Sabah Raful held a monopoly on pharmaceutical distribution along with their enterprise, Grupo Saba. And this accusation came because Raful had partnered with the conglomerate American company General Electric to become the 3rd largest television network, which would have threatened and diminished the market share of Televisa and TV Azteca. This was seen as largely hypocritical considering Televisa and TV Azteca dominated at least 95% of all television frequencies, which is a duopoly. Foreign intervention in Mexico might not be that well known to most people who don't know much about the country, but Mexico has mostly remained neutral in foreign wars and does not get involved in foreign affairs much. However, foreign intervention in Mexico has occurred, with the most famous example being the United States' involvement in the Mexican Revolution. Mexico generally had good relations with the United States at the time, after just recently opening Mexico to foreign investment. However, with the outbreak of rebellions across the country, Porfirio Diaz began to become overwhelmed with the rebellions. At the same time, the then President of the United States, William Taft, wanted to keep Diaz in power, which began major US support for Diaz, which continued even after Diaz's multiple failures to remain in power. Eventually, with US support, Porfirio's nephew Felix Diaz and former General Bernardo Reyes would launch a successful coup coup d'etat with General Victoriano Huerta becoming the new ruler of Mexico. The United States, now under the presidency of Woodrow Wilson, did not want Huerta in power where they would enforce an arms embargo on Huerta's regime, as well as supporting a new outbreak of rebellion supplying the revolutionaries with weapons, which eventually led to Huerta going into exile and the US helping the revolutionaries gain power. There's also been other instances of foreign intervention, such as France invading Mexico in 1861. However, most of the foreign intervention has come from the United States, as the interest in Mexico has been prevalent since the early 1800s. On June 5, 2009, in Hermosillo, Sonora, a building fire at the ABC Daycare Center occurred, which tragically resulted in the deaths of 14 children, with the death toll rising to 49 children in the days that followed due to health issues related to the fire. The fire supposedly started next door to the daycare at a tire warehouse, subsequently spreading to the daycare, and was caused by the overheating of an air conditioner due to continuous and prolonged use. Multiple factors as to why the daycare was not able to get the 49 children out in time occurred, such as faulty safety measures in the event of rescue operations, the roof collapsing within only minutes of the fire spreading to the daycare, and the fire alarms in the daycare not alerting the staff of a fire. Francisco Jorge Stanley Albaitero was a comedian, TV entertainer, and politician, a part of the PRI, who was murdered on June 7, 1999 by a group of gunmen, with only one being identified and arrested for the murder based on the testimony of a cellmate, Luis Alberto Salazar Vega. Francisco went by the stage name Paco Stanley, and was a beloved and recognized celebrity in Mexico, hosting a variety of shows over the years, such as Andale, Un Poco de Paco en Radio, and Una Tras Otra, to name a few. He worked with Televisa and TV Azteca at different points in his career, and was a husband and father, having 4 children, one of which would go to host his own show. On June 7, 1999, in Mexico City, Paco had left TV Azteca studios with his co-stars Mario Barcelos and Jorge Gil, where they went to the El Chaco de las Ranas restaurant. After finishing their food, and upon waiting with Gil and Gil's driver, 3 gunmen approached the car and opened fire on the 3 men inside. Paco was hit in the head with 3 shots, which killed him instantly, with the over 20 more remaining rounds being fired, hitting Gil and wounding him. During the initial investigation, Mario Bazares and Paula Durante, a college of Pacos, were arrested for the murder and detained for over a year before being released. This arrest led nowhere, and eventually in 2011, Luis Vega was charged for the murder due to his cellmate testifying to his confession. However, over the years, this case has uncovered a lot of bizarre evidence that points to other possible motives or possible different suspects. For starters, Paco's blood had shown traces of cocaine, and cocaine was actually found on his body in his pocket. Along with this, nobody else was targeted at all, which suggested this is an assassination and Paco was the target. Also, there's many who believe Paco's co-host allied with a local drug lord to assassinate Paco due to being conveniently away from the scene right before the shooting, feeling that he was mistreated by Paco on the show, and that would benefit largely by having full control of the show once Paco was taken out. However, it is noted that the police already coerced a bystander to give a statement implicating Durante, stating she was meeting with the shooters, but Durante has a strong alibi, placing her nowhere near the shooters at any point. So this entry, I think, is referring to 2 different things. Drug bunkers is most definitely referring to, well, drug bunkers in Mexico, which is no surprise because of the drug cartels. Something I find more interesting, however, is that in 2016, a tunnel that had stretched half a mile long running under the California-Mexico border was found. That was specifically used by drug cartels to transport large quantities of drugs across the border without having to go over or through the border. And more of these drug tunnels have been found all around the United States and Mexico border. Now, police blind-eyed, as the name suggests, is referring to the police in Mexico being paid to turn a blind eye to trafficking activities. And it's pretty common knowledge that police across Mexico are paid off and even employed in drug cartels. However, this whole entry could also just be bunched together in saying that the police are paid off to allow the construction of drug bunkers and tunnels. During the Mexican-American War in 1847, the U.S. Army had launched a campaign to seize Mexico City. During this campaign, the Battle of Chapultepec was fought, in which 2,000 U.S. troops attempted to fight their way through and gain hold of the Chapultepec castle just outside of Mexico City. General Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna has amassed 1,000 Mexican troops to defend the castle, which included cadets of the military academy. Of these cadets, the story of 6, commonly referred to as Niños Heroes or Kid Heroes, is celebrated as a civic holiday in Mexico to honor their bravery and sacrifice in the battle. During the battle, General Santa Anna, who was under the command of Nicolas Bravo Rueda, was assigned to commit 2,000 troops to defend the castle, but Santa Anna could only amass around 832, which led to the commitment of cadets to help defend the castle, due to being outnumbered and severely weakened by the U.S. invasion. However, the Niños Heroes had refused to fall back and retreat from the battle, instead choosing to continue fighting to the death. The 6 cadets were Juan de la Barrera, Francisco Marquez, Juan Escutia, Agustin Melgar, Fernando Montes de Oca, and Vicente Suarez. Legend has it that the final surviving cadet, Juan Escutia, had jumped from the castle wrapped in the Mexican flag to keep it from falling into the hands of the U.S. Army. A monument of the boys now exists in Chapultepec Park in Mexico City.